So yes, we're starting to get some viewers. Hi, Petra. Nice to see you here. Oh, good morning, Shauna. Let's get you up on the screen. That's one of the cool things. Hi, Beth. Let's talk a little. Hi, Catherine. Oh, yeah. Welcome. So I wanted to ask you, what are some of the things that you think would be unforgivable? You know, something that you just could not forgive. Is there something that you've experienced in your life or that you've thought about that might be really, really difficult? What's unforgivable for you? You know, murder, abuse, pedophilia, betrayal. Is there something or someone that you have not been able to forgive? Now, I find sometimes there are people that for no reason, no apparent reason, seem to really, hi, Denise. There are people that seem to irritate me for no reason. And I know, have you experienced that? Yeah, no? You can comment, it's okay. But there are things that just seem like they're just so unforgivable. But the thing is that forgiveness is one of the most essential things in our lives. If we don't forgive, we are powerless. If we don't forgive, we are at the mercy of our rage, of our anger. Yes. Yeah. And that actually happened to a mutual friend of Catherine's and mine. And she founded a project, Forgive. One of her best friends, this is Dr. Sean DeParron, one of her best friends killed the family of one of her other best friends, the whole family, as a drunk driver. And he actually reached out to help heal the children of the other driver. So that's something that's unforgivable. And then also, I want to talk about a woman named Mary Johnson, Mary Johnson Roy. She forgave the man who murdered her son and left him dying by the hospital. And you know, she was, yeah. Okay, Beth, we're going to bring you up on the screen here. Yeah, if we don't forgive, we are powerless. It's so true. But I want to talk about these bigger examples. This Mary Johnson Roy had her only son was murdered. And for 10 long years, she was enraged. She was just mourning. She could not let it go. It was just so horrible. She lived with bitterness. She lived with hatred. And she said, he was like an animal. And I felt he was where he needed to be. He needed to be caged. But today, they are like mother and son. They are best friends. She went to see him in prison after 10 years. She said that God nudged her. And she went to prison. And she said the visit brought her to her knees, that she felt, I'm going to quote this, when I stood up, I began to feel something in my feet, and it just began to move all the way up my body. And I knew that all the anger, all the hatred, all the animosity that I had for him, I knew it was over with. Yeah. So Catherine says, I've seen friends unable to get past adultery, especially if the spouse was sleeping with the best friend. It's double betrayal. Oh, yes. I've had clients who have experienced that as well. So all of these are very difficult, you know, the betrayal. Yeah, amazing. This is an amazing story, but she had divine help. You know, she wasn't going to get over this by herself, but she felt that God nudged her and she listened. She opened her heart, and now she and Oshia Israel, who was the man who was imprisoned, they speak to churches, they speak about forgiveness. And They hope to establish a center, I think, in Minneapolis. So that's a really beautiful thing. And forgiveness is so important. It's not about the other person. You know, if we live in a place where we're stuck, you know, we can't let things go. And believe me, I have been there. You know, you're in a place of blame, you're in a place of anger, you're in a place of rage, and you're in a place of victimhood, basically. Because if you can't let that go, you're stuck. You're in a place of being a victim. Oh, yeah, that's very true, Denise. Another adulterous betrayal that's hard to get over is when the affair is with your own sister. Oh, yeah, that would be really hard to get over. But here's the thing. If you keep holding on to that anger, if you keep holding on to that and not letting it go, it keeps you stuck. And it can keep you stuck for years. No, it's really, really important to let it go. Because if you can't, you're stuck in it. And if you're stuck in it, you're powerless. You have totally given your power away to this situation, to the anger, to the rage. So it's really important to get under it, to recognize what's really going on here. And it doesn't mean that you need to condone what the other person did. It doesn't mean that at all. But it does mean that you need to take the charge off of it, everything that you've been feeling. I'll give you an example, a very personal example. My father was very abusive to my mom, and he basically abandoned us. But in the year and a half that we lived with him, my mother was sleeping with furniture against the door, and she was in fear of her life. She was afraid he was going to break in and kill us. And then he really wasn't any part of my life. There was no support. There was nothing, not really any connection at all. I tried a couple of times to go see him, but he wasn't interested in the relationship. And there was a lot of hurt and pain on my part. You know, as a daughter, a father's relationship is just so incredibly important. He died when I was about 25. And a few years back, maybe 8 or 10 years back, a friend was giving me some energy healing. And she said, there's a doctor here. And he wants to help. And I said, yeah, that's my father and it's okay. And she said, but how do you know? Describe him. So I described him. And she said, yeah, that's him. The next morning she called me. She said, that doctor wants you to connect with him. Well, that was the last thing I wanted to do. But when somebody reaches out from beyond, I felt it was important. So even though I was reluctant, more than reluctant, I went into my meditation room and I sat on a cushion and I opened up. And the next thing I knew, I was completely surrounded with the most amazing love I have ever experienced. It blew my mind. And so I asked, what is this? And he said, I have always loved you. I will always love you. He said, we contracted before we were born that this was the relationship we would have in this lifetime. And I knew what he was saying was true. I could feel it. And I had tears streaming down my face. It was so incredibly intense. And I let it go. I let go all the anger, the pain, the hatred. I just forgave him. And it was a huge weight that left me. And it explained so much. I understood for the first time that everything comes from love. And that even though it may appear to be something horrible in this lifetime, it's so important to let it go and to recognize that by letting it go, we can grow. So I welcome any of your comments. You know, what are your thoughts about forgiveness? Anybody? Yeah. So what stops us from forgiving? When we don't want to forgive, it's usually because we are very, very angry. And anger is usually a surface emotion. It's covering up hurt and pain and fear. And it's very tricky to release the anger because we want that. It's sort of a protective shield because it keeps us focused on the other person rather than on ourselves. And very interestingly, when we forgive another person, we're really freeing ourselves. We're forgiving ourselves. So that forgiveness is just so, so powerful. And when we do allow ourselves to look at the hurt and the fear, and it lets us look at our own stuff. And it's not always that easy to do. It can be really difficult. And sometimes you want some help. Okay. Very true, Beth. Forgiveness is very important because it sets us free. It sets us free. And that's so true. And it not only that, but it empowers us. When you are stuck, you're dragging the other person with like a ball and chain with you wherever you go. That's what I was doing with my father. And, there's some very interesting things that happen when you forgive. It really creates a space for miracles to happen. I'm a miracles mentor, and I help people to move into that place by forgiveness, for letting go of everything that keeps them stuck, so that you can be free, so that you can move forward, so that you can grow into your bigger self. So Shauna, this one person keeps trying to worm their way back into my life. You don't have to let them. I have an ex-husband, a former husband, and I had a lot of anger toward him. And when my oldest granddaughter was being born, we'll talk about that in a minute, Shauna. You got to keep your shields up. Yeah. When my oldest granddaughter was being born, I knew that my former husband was going to be there, and I needed to release a lot of stuff. And so sometimes we need, we all do, and I'm really great at helping people to release their stuff, to free them, to move into a miracles place. But I also work with friends, and we can't always see the label when we're inside the jar ourselves. And so I did get some help, and I cleared so much stuff that when we were there in New Mexico with my family, we're staying in a hotel, Harrison and me. And I woke up and I said, I'm feeling so much love for Stephen. And he said, you are? And I said, yeah. Without him, I wouldn't have my beautiful children. I wouldn't have this beautiful granddaughter. And I was just feeling so much love and appreciation. Within 1 hour, I was trapped in my daughter's store behind the counter. Everybody else had just disappeared, and it was just him and me. And we had not been alone since the divorce many, many years earlier. And he has very, very intense energy. And I'm so sensitive and empathic, and I could just feel this energy just kind of worming its way in, like you were saying, Shauna. And I was feeling very uncomfortable. And so I did go back and I wrote him and I said, I love you. I appreciate you, but I really don't want to be friends. I've been there, done that. I'm here to see the kids. And I felt fine with that because I was able to set my boundaries and be very clear, but I was also feeling a great deal of love. And so I think it's really important, Shauna, that you can set your boundaries and just say, I'm not comfortable with this. This doesn't work. And I wish you all the very best. I'm not holding on to any more charge about this. I'm letting it go, because love is really the essence of who we are. And if we're not allowing ourselves to be fully in our essence, then we are blocking love, we're blocking miracles, and we're blocking our personal growth. So it's so important to let that go. And of course, you don't need to condone anything that they did. I mean, there's horrendous things that happen. I live in Parkland, 5 blocks from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and very much aware of how much pain this one shooter caused in this neighborhood. 17 people died. Should he be punished? Should he be held responsible? Absolutely. And and are they going to be able to heal immediately? No. This is something that takes time. And there are miracles that can happen, and there are ways that we can move through the pain and the grief. But it's really important that you allow yourself to feel your feelings, to acknowledge them, and then eventually to release the charge on the experience and let it go. So Petra says, forgiving is what you do for yourself. It doesn't mean you condone what happened. If you can't forgive, you're poisoning yourself, but it's a process. You have to be aware of this. The older you get, I'm 64, the more you've met these situations. I've learned, and I'm still learning how it works. Being clear of what your boundaries are very important. So true, Petra. Very, very true. So can we forgive the unforgivable? Yes, we need to, because if we don't, we're stuck. And if we're stuck, we're not growing. We're prisoners. We're powerless, really. So, so it's really, really important to let that go. So I wanted to share with you some of the ways that we can release anger and forgive another person. Well, for one thing, if you hold a pen in your hand, here we are on camera, you hold a pen in your hand and you just let it go. It can be that easy because it's a choice. It's just like, okay, I choose right now. I have decided that I have suffered with this long enough. I'm going to let it go. So that is one option. And it doesn't work for everything because very often we're complicated people, beings. We have many layers, and there may be reasons that we're holding on to something. Sometimes, I'll give you an example. Last week, I was doing a forgiveness exercise for myself because it's a lifelong process. And I was purposely brought to mind somebody who irritates the hell out of me. Don't know her that well. But when I think about her, I just feel really, or I was, not I've let it go. But I would just feel really irritated. Just everything about her bothered me. And so I did a forgiveness exercise and I let her go. And what I did, I'll share with you, is I imagined that I saw her in front of me, and I imagined that there was light just radiating out of her. And as this light radiated out, it just covered her completely. And then I just saw that. I saw her, completely radiant. And then I imagined a friend, and I had the light from the person that had irritated me was shared over to the other person. And so now they were both radiating light, and they both gave it to me. And I was radiating light too. And with that, I recognized that we're all the same. We're all one. And I was able to let it go. So that's an exercise that I wanted to share with you. And there are a lot of different ways that we can let things go. So one of the things that I do is I work with highly sensitive people, professionals, and I use something called energy management. And I'm an energy management specialist, and it's a term that I've created, and a miracles mentor. But I help highly sensitive professionals to manage your energy so that you can live happy, peaceful, prosperous lives. So that was my little commercial. And also, I wanted to offer you the option to have the opportunity to have a one-on-one consultation with me. And this is an actual work session where we can work to release any of the issues that you've been carrying around with you, that you've been, it's been making you stuck, making you feel, maybe powerless, all of the things that come with holding on to old stuff. When you let it go, it's just the most amazing, expansive feeling. You feel light, you feel expanded, and you start to step into your love essence, which is always there, but it's like it's being covered up with all of these clouds of anger, all of these hurts and fears. And as an empath, I can see, I can feel in my body where you're holding this stuff, and I can help you release it. It's just very, very quick. The other thing I wanted to share with you, also free, is we've had the World Miracle Peace Experiment. Its final day is tomorrow. It's day 30, and it's been so wonderful that I'm expanding it to the summer of global peace. And you can just ask to join our World Miracle Peace Experiment group, and you'll be notified of all the upcoming changes and exciting things that we're going to be doing with the summer of global peace, where I'll be bringing in guest meditation leaders and a lot of other really exciting things. And it's all complimentary, because this is my mission is to expand peace through the world. So does anybody have any questions or anything that you would like to comment about this broadcast today? I've got another broadcast happening in a half hour for the World Miracle Peace Experiment, day 29. And this is just 7 minutes of meditation every day. And I know, just for me and from all of the comments of everyone that's been participating, not only are we experiencing the sharing of love and peace for the Middle East, covering the Middle East with a blanket of love and peace, but we all experience so much peace, because it's a spiritual principle that giving and receiving are the same. As we give love and peace, we receive it. And it's a beautiful thing. So, oh, thank you, Beth. She says, thank you so much for the inspiration and light. So I wanted to share with you today about forgiveness, and we can talk more about it next week. It will probably be on Wednesday next week, as I'll be out of town, but on Monday. There's so many more aspects that I wanted to share. Shauna, thank you. Wonderful. Really looking forward to it. So you all have a wonderful, blessed day. Thank you so much for joining me.